next question I want to deal with is comes from Alexis Mason. Dan, that was an excellent question as well. We don't have one on here tonight. That's not a good question. Alexis puts on here, how old was Joseph in comparison to Mary, and how many children did Joseph have before he wed Mary? I'm going to give a very quick answer to this, Alexis. That's some good questions. And there's a lot of confusion out there about this, because there's certain religious organizations and different people that there's some that want to say Mary's not a virgin. There's some that are so defensive of her virginity that they tend to make some arguments that can't be proven. And so, Catholicism has really done a lot around these studies. I think you and I were discussing that earlier. But how old was Joseph in comparison to Mary? We actually don't know that for sure. By custom, the male was typically older than the female. There are some that by tradition say he was considerably older by tradition, but from the Bible, we don't know. We go to that answer a lot, but remember, if we can't give you a Bible answer, we're not going to state it.
Yeah. And sometimes some of the information that people come up with or that they apply to this comes from extra biblical books like the Apocrypha and things like that. When we say we're going to give you a Bible answer, we're dealing primarily with the New Testament as what you typically see in the Church of Christ and throughout most churches in the United States, and the translation of just the New Testament that does not include the Apocrypha.
Exactly. And so the next question on here is, how many children did Joseph have before he wed Mary? Ultimately, we don't know that either. We don't even know if he had children before. We know that there were siblings. And what we want to go to is certainly Luke 1:26-38 is a great reference in that you have Mary and his siblings coming to, and he says, well, who is my brother? Who is my mother? So that's that early reference that we start having. I told you Luke 1:26-38. That's not the one I wanted, but I think I was referring to Mark 3:31, actually. Mark 3:31.
Well, one that came to my mind was Matthew 13:55. Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? And then also in Mark, it mentions his
Mark
sisters.
6:3.
Yeah.
It actually mentions the sisters on it. So the early reference that we see the siblings is actually in the case of them coming to the door seeking Jesus. And then in the Matthew 13, the Mark 6, we actually see them being named. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I wanted to make a point that when it comes to the traditions of the day, a lot of the marriages were arranged by the parents prior to the time. And one thing that is pointed out and is overlooked in the religious world, this is in Matthew chapter 1 and verse 25. It said, and Joseph knew her not till she had brought forth her firstborn son. And he called his name Jesus, indicating if somebody is a firstborn son, that means there are children that follow, does it not?
Well, what we also want to be clear on is Luke 1:26-38. That's the reference I jotted down because that's where it refers to Mary being a virgin. So we know he did not have any children in that he didn't have any children by Mary before this point.
Right.
It is thought that Jesus would be the oldest with these other siblings that would follow. And it's neat to think about. Could you imagine having to live up, Troy, to the expectation that Jesus would give as a brother?
Right.
Well, that's exactly why you read in John 7, they didn't believe in him at first because they're having to, I can't even imagine what it must have been like being in the same household as the Messiah.
Can't you be more like your brother?
Exactly.
Just follow your brother's example. You think Joseph's brothers had it bad. Man, imagine being Jesus's. Man, that'd be rough.